Packed grounds everywhere with skill and entertainment you won't find in the modern game. Denis Law had joined United from Italian club Torino in 1962 for the then staggering fee of £115,000. The swashbuckling Scottish striker quickly became the king at Old Trafford. He recalls seeing the young pretender to his crown for the first time.
Well, of course, he was only a young boy. I think he came with another Irish lad, and I had just joined United. Of course, they were building just after the Munich disaster, and I saw him in the gym down at our training ground in Salford. Two young boys, and absolutely tremendous skill. As I say, United building up after the crash. We had had a bad start to the season, and we nearly went down that season, but in '63, and I remember the game here, it was at Old Trafford, and I didn't play, I was in the stand with Sir Matt Busby, and George placed against West Brom, and it was absolutely magnificent. It really was the start of the sort of side that United had in that '60s, of being a great side with the likes of Bobby Charlton, Nobby Stiles, Pat Crellin, David Herden, of course, this young lad who had come from Northern Ireland, young. I mean, when I came down from England, I was thin as well. I think I weighed about 8 stone. I think Bestie weighed about 7 stone. But you could see that he had everything. He had the skill, he was brave, he was good in the air. I mean, it sounds all cliches, you know, but he was good with both feet, he was brave, he scored goals, he never stopped running. Magnificent player.
Had he any weaknesses at all?
Can't think of any. Probably after, in the sort of the middle '60s going on towards the late '60s, when we really were a very, very good side. And we went to Benfica. We had taken a 3-2 lead. They were one of the great sides, probably the greatest side in Europe at that time. And we went there and we beat them 5-1. And Bestie had an absolutely magnificent game. And of course, it was the time of the Beatles as well. And he was a good-looking guy, black hair, the long hair, single. And after that game, of course, he was called, I think it was El Beatle or whatever it was, you know. And he just, if it was a weakness in him, he maybe at that time just began to be a little bit greedy. You know, sometimes he always beat 3 or 4 men, but he was trying to beat 5 or 6. So if it was a weakness, it maybe was around that time that maybe he should have passed the ball when he, earlier on. But that weakness is not a weakness as such. It is just maybe a little bit greedy, but appreciate it. But of course, at times, you know, I mean, do you know football? You know?
Just a bit.
Well, when you're messing about in there and you knock a ball out, and Bestie's got it, and he was on the flanks, and he would beat 1 or 2, and the ball should be yours, you know? And he'd say, hey, Bestie, come on, let's give it to me. And he would beat another one, and he'd say, yeah, bang, in the back of the net, you know? So you say, you little
Was he a complex person at all?
I mean, Bestie's had, as you are in the public eye, you get a tremendous amount of publicity. Sometimes, and a great many of the times, of course, it's not good. You know, and we've seen Bestie over the last 10 or 20 years, you know, had adverse publicity. But the one thing that people don't know, the people who know him do, and he is a terrific lad. He is a lovely lad, and he doesn't do any harm to anybody. He does a lot of good stuff, which is never really taken out and come out in the media, whether it be television, radio, or the press. And that's the one thing that a lot of people don't know about Bestie. You think he's a sort of, you know, sort of star, with a big, and he's, you know, he's always out doing the wrong things. But George Best is a lovely, lovely lad.
When I got in the team, I played exactly the same as I did when I was a kid. You know, I didn't want to give the ball away, you know, because, you know, I suppose I was better than the other kids. And I tended to play the same way in the First Division. And at times, I mean, they used to pull their hair out, both him and Bobby, you know, because I was, I suppose, basically playing the same as I'd always played. That, of course, changed with, you know, a little bit of experience, you know. He became a little bit less selfish. But I can understand it, you know, because I know what I used to do. I mean, if I beat a player 6 times, I wanted to come back and beat him 7 times. So I can understand their frustration.
Completing that priceless threesome was Bobby Charlton. 106 times he played for England and was a key member of the England team which won the World Cup in 1966. At Manchester United, he's something of an institution. As a player, after surviving the Munich air crash, he went on to serve the club for 16 years, playing in over 600 games. Today, he's still at Old Trafford as a club director. The legend is that the two of you didn't get on and you didn't turn up to play in this testimonial. Yet he said nice things to me about you. What was the relationship like with Bobby Charlton?
Okay, I mean, on the field, you know, we were teammates, and I think if you watch any old film clips and shots of the games, you know, if he scored, I was the first there to congratulate him, and vice versa, you know, because we played in the same team, and we were playing for the same end product. But off the field, you know, he had his way of living and I had my way. You know, he was a family man, he went home to the family, and I went out and got, you know, and so socially we didn't mix, and that was it.
Well, I mean, George was a different age group from me. People used to say to me, you know, that you didn't get on with George. I got on with George Best quite all right. It was just that we were a different age group. I didn't go out with him because I went home. You know, I wasn't the lad that went out to nightclubs. I didn't drink particularly much. I had my own pals. But people who are a lot closer would probably answer that question better. Looking at it really from the outside, I would have to say really that some people whose intentions were very well-meaning with regard to George's own well-being, really he didn't listen to. He listened to the wrong type of people, I think.
Old Trafford at that time with all the players, he was a great fella. I think probably maybe the media were a bit to blame for what... They drove him mental. They wouldn't leave him alone wherever he went or whatever he'd done. They just wouldn't leave him alone. Being here at Old Trafford at that particular time and George being amongst him, he was a smashing little fella. He was no different from any of the rest of us.
Was he unlucky to be a good-looking Irishman and
I think that was his biggest problem, being good-looking.
being dubbed El Beetle after that great game against Benfica? Was that the beginning of the end, perhaps?
No, not really. I think the beginning of the end for George was when the team started getting a little bit older and there was a lot of pressure put on George that he was going to be the one that would have to do everything himself. But unfortunately, sometimes when you've got a great side, they stay together for a long, long period of time, maybe 8 or 9, 10 years, and then when you have to make a change, it's not one change, it's 5 or 6 at the same time, and it's difficult.
Now, you were something of a father figure to George, and in fact, he ended up living with your family for a time.
That was the only way I could get out. No, George was... I mean, it's difficult to explain to people because people sometimes believe what the press write, and George wasn't what the press wrote about him. He was a lovely fella and a quiet lad, and I couldn't speak more highly of him. All the things that he was supposed to have done in life just weren't true.
I was glad that I played with him rather than against him. As a fullback, I think it must have been hell at times because I can remember personally players like John Angus right back at Burnley. I always remember John Angus because he's a good friend of mine, come from the same part of the country. And when you play against players and you talk about them, you talk to them socially before you actually play them. And George Best, I always remember turning John Angus, who was then quite a hard, tough fullback, and he turned him inside out, really. It was embarrassing to see a friend embarrassed like that, really. I mean, he was he had the ball through his legs, going in the direction that he thought George was going in, but never did. And that's one of the first matches when George first came into the team against a very strong, capable fullback. But George didn't have any illusions about it. He thought that he was a fantastic player, and it didn't matter who he was playing against. He held no esteem to anybody. He was going to beat them, and it was quite impressive as a young player to see this happen. Embarrassing to see your friends humiliated sometimes, you know, but nevertheless he was a fantastic little player. The problem with George was it never lasted long enough, but the period that he was here, I mean, he's held in awe here, you see, by the people at that particular time because they'd never seen anything quite like it, and they were lucky that they saw it every week. And he was always brave, always positive, always wanted to do things. Absolutely marvellous player.
This football in the museum at Old Trafford is a lasting reminder to George of one of the more memorable moments in the best career. It's the ball used in United's fifth-round FA Cup tie against Northampton Town in February 1970. United won 8-2, with Best celebrating his return from suspension in style, scoring a double hat-trick.
Farron, good ball to Kidd. Morgan's in the centre, Charlton's coming through, Best is there, and Best a rank more for Northampton. Well cut out by Sadler. Ferrand and George Best through. That run into his path beautifully. Book is committed and it's a goal! Charlton through to Kidd. Best is in the middle and onside. Morgan is coming to bring support. Kidd. Best! His hat-trick! No! Now! Brian Kidd. Best waiting hopefully in the middle again. Cut out by Brooks, but straight back to Kidd. Best! It's in! "16 minutes into the second half, and George Best gets Manchester United's and his own fourth goal. 4-0 Manchester United lead. Back header, Kidd! Number 5 from Brian Kidd. Burns quickly in the game and putting Best through, and here goes Best. It must be his 5th, surely. Yes, he's rolled it in! This incredible player, his 5th goal of this game, his 19th of the season. Francis Burns, his first touch of the ball, strokes a beautiful through pass, and George Best does the rest. Nice ball from Best to Burns. Morgan here with a chance for another one. Saved, but it's scored now by Brian Kidd. Brian Kidd's second. Edwards coming to challenge Felton. Kiernan and Kieran in again. To Best. Here he goes! And George Best sets a club scoring record. 6 goals in a match.
In 1976, disenchanted with English football and tired of being hounded by the British press and media, Best headed west, taking his skills to the then booming soccer scene in America. He was to play 5 summers there, with Los Angeles Aztecs in California, Fort Lauderdale in Florida, before completing his soccer safari in the sunshine back in California with the Earthquakes of San Jose.
It was exciting because it was a new sport for them. They were bringing, you know, Pele was going there, Beckenbauer, Cruyff was there, Neeskens, you know, Eusebio, all the best players in the world were going there. And it was nice to go there and be in at the start of something that was really exciting. The Americans, when they put their mind to it, are the best in the world at presenting anything. And I was in on the ground floor, and it was big crowds, the organisation. The razzmatazz was a little bit difficult to get used to, but that's the American way.